Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Subnet Show. I'm your host, Gabriel Cardona, coming to you live from the beautiful city of San Francisco, where it's been absolutely brutally hot this week. I hope everybody's doing great out there. I'm joined as always by my amazing co-host, the man, the myth, the legend, the man with the most cats in crypto, Connor Daly. What is up, my friend?
What is up, Gabriel? I got my new haircut.
You're looking
Got
sharp.
the
Looking sharp.
this is the wedding look. Not my wedding. This is just wedding season for me. I have 3 weddings to go to in the next 3 weeks. Thank you to all my friends who conveniently scheduled them back to back to back. But yeah, so gotta get cleaned up, gotta get all my dry cleaning done. Gonna be on the road tomorrow. So looking forward to seeing some people and but yeah, a lot of travel in a short amount of time.
When was the last time you got a haircut? Do you remember?
Like April, like it was actually right after
Oh,
Summit. I was
okay.
gonna try to get the haircut for Summit,
Got it.
but I was not on it.
Mhm. Okay, so we have an absolutely amazing guest today. But before we bring on our guest, Connor has some big news that he wants to share. So I'm going to pass the mic to Connor. Let us know what's up, man.
So I have doubled the number of cats that I currently own. I'm just kidding.
That's good
No.
news.
I am fostering a rabbit right now, which is it's interesting. Rabbits are nice. They're not as good as cats, but it's kind of fun. But the real announcement is that this is actually going to be my last episode of the Subnet show. We'll talk a little bit more about this at the end, but I'm not going anywhere. Still working for Ava Labs.
Mhm.
The kind of punchline about this is just that I've been spending a lot of my free time working on crypto stuff and a lot of my work time working on crypto stuff. And I just kind of ran out of space in my life for non-crypto things. And I just want to kind of reclaim a little bit of that. So I might still come back on for guest appearance or something like that. But this is probably the end of my regular hosting days. But I want to just say thank you very much. I'll say a little bit more at the end, but yeah, thank you so much for all the support and love that you guys have given us over the last year and a half, however long we've been doing this. It's been a while, but let's get to today's episode because we do have a great guest.
Yes. So again, we'll talk about it more at the end of the show. But of course, in case you don't make it that far, extreme gratitude to Connor. Subnet show would not have been nearly as successful as it has been without him and him putting in his energy. So I'm incredibly grateful. He's always welcome back anytime. My intention is to keep the show going. I don't think it's going to continue to be a weekly interview format. I think I might change it into something a bit more technical. But again, we can talk more at the end, and I'm open to brainstorming. So if anybody has any brilliant ideas, feel free to reach out to me. Okay, all of that in line. So today we really do have a very, very special guest, somebody who is an absolute block star and power play in the whole Avalanche ecosystem and has definitely made some serious moves. And many of the cool things that you've seen over the past 2 years in the Avalanche ecosystem have been either cultivated by him or brainstormed by him or him and his team. So super huge player. We're very, very fortunate today to have the VP of marketing at Ava Labs, Jay Kurahashi-Sofue. What is up, Jay?
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining. How are you doing today? Where are you coming to us from? Are you in New York?
Yeah, so I'm based in Williamsburg in New York City, born and raised in New York. I've been in the city for I guess almost like I don't know, 8 years, 8 years, something like that.
Nice.
Um, Pretty close to all the crypto happenings in New York, I would say. So for those that are local around me, shoot me a ring. I'm always down to connect.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, your job is really cool. Most of the cool things that people see from the outside that have helped, turn on the world to Avalanche have come through the marketing department. You've definitely been one of the main drivers of all of the different events we've had all around the world, from Barcelona and definitely Berlin and Lisbon, and I'm sure obviously just recently at Seoul as well, and stuff going forward. So you have a pretty cool job. You have a very talented and successful team. I guess maybe we can start at the beginning, because usually our format is kind of crypto journey, crypto vision. So I wonder, just in general, when and how did you first find out about cryptocurrency?
The first time was with Bitcoin in 2011. I was just in high school. It's my last year of high school, funny enough, and I was the long and short of it is was playing around with darknet markets for fake IDs. That was basically the situation. And I'm very open about it because that's the origin story. So you have to be open about it. But that led to other more interesting things. It was saying, okay, why is this thing appreciating and depreciating so rapidly? At the time, it was obviously much less volatile, or maybe actually it's more volatile, but much less in terms of like wowing the news and media cycles. I think it wasn't really taking the world by storm yet in terms of all the hype that it gets, especially when it runs up and also when it goes down. And so I think after that, really it wasn't for 3 or 4 years after that until I really started to trade it more frequently. I was doing a face-to-face Bitcoin transactions too, because that was the way you did it at the time. Mt. Gox, Circle, a few of the other kind of players that don't exist now, but also some of them do exist. Plenty of just testing and iteration and just understanding how these products work. Now, Q 2015 or 2014, 15, something around that time, Vitalik and the ETH crowd was talking about smart contracts. That to me was what piqued my interest because it was talking about decentralized applications. I had no idea what that meant at the time, but it piqued my interest because I was like, well, it's related to Bitcoin, so maybe that's the next thing, right? It's always the next thing in tech. So kind of took that signal and really went into the rabbit hole. That was really kind of the first mark of that. And I actually just started a career in advertising post grad, and I had a 6-year stint in the music industry prior to that as well. And so I was really fond on marketing. Marketing was always something that I thought was interesting. It was what contributed to the success of the music publication I was running. And I also think that if you know marketing, it's really the other pieces are maybe a little bit more straightforward. I think marketing is always kind of this elusive idea where it's all about growth, but what does that actually mean? How do you get there? And so to me, it's like a puzzle piece, and it's really about how do you put the right pieces in place to maximize your success. It's not guaranteeing your success, but it's all about experimentation and also humans. Humans are who we're selling to at the end of the day. And so to me, that's super, super fascinating because humans are so interesting. We are, of course, one of them. And we know exactly how insane the human mind is. And so multiply that by the global population, and you have basically the marketing challenge. So going back to the 2015 cycle, or kind of milestone in the story is then blockchain brands were looking at firms like Ogilvy, the place that I was employed at, for marketing services. There were also a lot of traditional companies that were looking for marketing services at Ogilvy. And I kind of was like, wait, this weird crypto thing that I do behind closed doors and kind of talk about sometimes at the company, not really that much of the time, is now bubbling up and becoming more interesting. And people are talking about ETH all of a sudden on my office floor. And basically took that signal and ended up starting a marketing consultancy that was kind of part of the time there, just focused on crypto brands. So we had a lot of different crypto brands that were coming through the pipeline, a lot of ICOs. Some of them exist, some of them don't. And so had a lot of really good experience just like trying new go-to-market strategies, just going over and over and over. We ended up probably pushing through about 5 to 7 different types of use case or like pieces of work, if you will. But I think one thing led to another, and I didn't really think that I would really learn the nitty-gritty of everything that I know about this space unless I was in the belly of the beast being on the client side. And so that's when I turned left and right and looked at other opportunities, landed at a company called Fluidity, led marketing there for 2 primary products. One was a DEX called AirSwap, and the other one was called Factora. It was a security tokens arm. We actually tokenized an apartment building in Manhattan and tokenized the debt, so you could actually buy those debt tokens with DAI. Unfortunately, no one actually, I think only one person bought it. And so I think it was just a little bit too early of an idea, and a lot of the infrastructure hadn't caught up yet. And even today, I would say the infrastructure is still not quite there. But what was amazing was learned so much, incredible amounts. But what also happened was Consensus ended up acquiring us. And so that was kind of the pivotal moment of like, do I move forward or do I go to different opportunities? And that's where, as kind of serendipitous as I'm making this sound, it's not really, but John Woo DM'd me and was like, hey, we're looking for a marketing lead for Ava Labs. Do you want to join? This was in March of 2020. And so the acquisition was just about to come through. And I was like, well, sure, interested to learn about what Ava Labs is. I had no idea. looked left and right. There's a bunch of other opportunities I had. A few other L1s, and mostly dApps, I think, were the other side of the crypto sphere of opportunities. And I was like, all right, well, I know the team, a lot of them, especially Goon, of course. Ended up digging deep into the white paper, understood probably a decent amount, but nowhere close to what I understand now. But I think the consensus protocol was what I was really focused on. And I was like, okay, do I want to leave the Ethereum ecosystem totally behind and start a new life effectively? That's basically what you're doing when you're transitioning L1s. I honestly was like, well, worst case scenario, if this L1 doesn't take off, then I can look at different jobs in the space and I can try something else. But I still think this is an insane challenge and almost like also an insane opportunity at the time. And that's when I was like, all right, you know what, screw it, let's just do it. And so jumped in and started from there. And the rest is basically Ava Labs history, but that was kind of how I got into it.
And so when you came on board, I believe you and I started maybe even the same week. We started very, very close to each other.
Yeah.
So when you came on as a VP and built out your team, or was there somebody already in the role?
Yeah, no, it was me and Patrick Sutton, the first two hires. Patrick started 2 weeks before, but he's basically the right hand and always has been. He's an incredible person. You guys know him. And then I remember when you joined, actually, I had no idea of what the BCH community was, except for when the fork had happened. So I was like, "Oh, this Gabriel guy, like he's like clearly big in BCH," and then Noah and a few others, Tyler as well. And so I just like was like, I guess every single chain has its vibrant ecosystem. I just happen to not know anything about it. And so that was actually really cool. I remember meeting you and I was like, all right, I remember we did a bunch of like tissue sessions and understanding like what's happening in BCH, what's doing well, what's not, how can we learn from them? And that was really cool to see too, and really educational for me.
Yeah, definitely. So as VP of marketing, what does it mean to be the VP of marketing at Ava Labs? What is sort of like the guiding light, the North Star of your team, if you will? What are some of the challenges? What does your day-to-day look like?
I'm also curious how that has changed from when you started to what it is now.
Yeah, sure. So I think when I started, it was classic like two-man shop, right? Really about being scrappy and how do we do as much as possible with as little resources as possible. We also remind you, Gabriel remembers this, we did not have a successful token sale. We did not have a mainnet launch, and we didn't have a growing dApp ecosystem because obviously mainnet didn't exist. So a lot of unknowns, right? And so a lot of it was really understanding how can we maximize success with basically almost no information that we have. So that was kind of the first year. And also what really was the remit was, again, focusing on those 3 milestones: token sale, mainnet launch, grow out the ecosystem. And so we focus on digital channels and then PR, of course, with Patrick, and really just started to chug along that way. That was like the first year. Then the team started getting built out. We had junior support, we had some other support on the social side, paid side, and that's when you start to build out these competencies. And you have now leads who can actually take the channels that you may have been giving like 20% of your time on and actually, hopefully, giving 100% of their time. And so they can lift that higher than you could ever lift it ever before. And so fast forward to now, I think the scope has obviously increased because the product has grown and expanded. But I feel, at least from a day-to-day perspective, I feel very similar with what we're doing. It's just kind of different types of work. Like I feel like in a startup world, especially in crypto, you not only have to be a strategic contributor, but you also have to execute. Like there are times when I'm the one in the room taking notes. It's not because I'm the VP of marketing and I'm all of a sudden going to take a foot off the gas and not take notes. I've never had that mentality. I think that's a silly one. I think it's all almost about who can do it the best or who's available and willing to help. And so I think we've collectively, even outside of marketing, I would say, we've done a really good job with making sure that that culture exists. And so hopefully egos aren't something that we have to combat, and we can actually get down to what really matters and actually get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. So I think that's really the high level. And I think the one thing that I would say now is a little different is because the team and the scope has expanded so much, it's not like I can look at everything effectively at the same time as I used to, perhaps. So now it's a little bit more trust with some of the team members that we've hired, and then also coverage of verticals that maybe doesn't have as much coverage as it should have. Like a good example would be events, product marketing, community. Those are areas that I actually focus on usually on a on a more focused basis. And events, of course, that's, I know you guys alluded to that. And so that's kind of where my day-to-day is usually focused on either those three verticals, and then obviously helping out the other verticals when I can, just because I have the experience, but not so much on a day-to-day basis.
How has our event strategy come into life? And what are the kind of influences that we've had over the past year, and how are you thinking about events going forward?
Events was started out of by accident, I think. I mean, it was always something that had to happen, but I think the bandwidth was always the enemy. But one day it was Lisbon. You both were there, and it's funny. It's almost a year ago, which is crazy. But I think it was like Lisbon was, I remember, like early October, and it was right around this time when we saw this looming thing called ETH Lisbon that was starting to drum up a lot of excitement on Twitter, on Discord, things like that. And so for us as an EVM chain, Avalanche is an EVM chain, are obviously our biggest customers are the people that are already committed to Ethereum, because they know Solidity, right? Hands, at least on the developer side. And so when you think about events are a really good way to separate yourself from the hard sell and get down to the emotion of the people. If you go to an event and you have an amazing time, you will never care about any of the minute intricacies that have existed in there. Of course, they all ladder up to that success, but you just want a really good experience. That's why there's experiential marketing, and that's a vertical that's very, very built out. And so we're basically taking that playbook and bringing that into the crypto world. And I think the also other edge that we have is our events team, although it is new in the sense that it's less than a year old, all of us have 10 years plus experience, mostly in the music events side. And so what we're taking is a lot of the learnings from music events and then bringing it into crypto, and the event bar for events in crypto is still really low. And I stand by that. And I think there's just a signal to noise issue. I don't think it's because the talent is not good. And so I think we have to really come together as an ecosystem and say, do we need 50,000 conferences in a year? Or can we actually figure out how to change up the model? And if we do need those 50,000 conferences in a year, how can we make that a little bit more interesting for the attendee? So ultimately, they can have a great experience. And so I remember, kind of closing thought there is, I remember when you, Connor, especially you, stepped into Lisbon, and you I think it was like speechless, like really was just like no idea what to do. Gabriel, I think, came right after. I can't remember what the order of operations was, but you both came in. I remember I was like, I need to watch you guys and the people that weren't as close to the events planning to see like what the raw reaction is. And it was just like, oh my God, like this feels like a playground. And then immediately you both were energized to network. You were energized to do 1,000,001 things. And that is exactly what we want out of not only our team members, of course, but also the attendees, which I think we were able to do really well in the Lisbon event and also the other events as well.
Yeah, it's a very different experience than I was expecting. I was expecting an industry conference that would have booths or whatever. Like if you've ever been to like, yeah, I most of my event experience for big things is like Comic-Con or whatever. I was like imagining like going to like where you have kind of the show floor where just there's a lot of companies that have a lot of booths, and there's a person standing in front of the booth, and they're going to give you a pamphlet. Maybe they give you a t-shirt or free pen, and then they'll talk to you about the thing, or like kind of like a job fair or whatever, that kind of thing. I was not expecting to come into this space where there's just like lounge chairs and a race car and
Yeah.
racing sims and like food and drink and like good music and like outdoor seating by a fire pit with like marshmallow roasting sticks.
Yeah, that was a good one.
I was just like, that was not the vibe I was expecting. I'm like, okay, I'm here to work. I'm like, I'm gonna just be pitching and selling the whole time, and I was, but I was doing it in a very different way where it's a lot more about relating to people, a lot more about just kind of like creating an environment where people can have fun and feel relaxed and show that we can work hard and play hard at the same time.
Yeah, I don't know. I know Jade probably gets a lot of credit for Lisbon. I don't know how much she's contributed to the ones after that. I know Jade, I said previously, I know Jay has contributed a bunch because I've had a few meetings with him where he's shown me the floor outline, in 3D a couple weeks before the event.
Yeah.
And to me, the Avalanche house and the different events we've had that I've been to, which is Lisbon, Barcelona, and Berlin, they to me set the bar to another level. I've been going to crypto conferences for several years now, and they just are done so very well. And to me, they just speak, it shines a light of, I think, high quality on the Avalanche brand. That's the, like, if I had to just pin it down to one little phrase, to me, it just seemed very high quality. Everything done there was just done so very well. If you've ever been to a really good party that was just done well, very classy, and everything was super high end. The food was great. The drinks were great. We had the car there. The music was just killer. We have all the industry leaders speaking about their projects. It was amazing. And then Barcelona, my God, Barcelona was the next level. Berlin was a little bit dialed down because it was in concert with the race, but it was still pretty tricked out. It was just one day. But I think Barcelona, now that was a next level. So I guess there's a lot we can unpack there around the events. How do you choose where you're going to have the events?
When we look at things, I mean, the last year was really mapped towards the Formula E team. So for those that don't know, I think if you probably listen to the Subnet show, you probably know, but we have Avalanche has a Formula E team, the Andretti team. So Avalanche, Andretti, Formula E. It's a electric motorsports league. It's associated with the FIA, which is the governing body of Formula One. And so all under the same family. And they race all around the world. They have, I can't remember what the exact number is, like 16 plus races. And so it was really understanding, okay, do these markets have likely a high, I guess, high concentration of Web3 audiences or technical audiences, even broadly speaking, or even like, I don't know, enthusiasts, I guess, is more on the non-technical side, even though they likely will still like enjoy consuming technical content or technical leaning content. And so that's where like Berlin, Barcelona, Lisbon, all of these, and Seoul too, actually, every single one, honestly, checks off those boxes, and a little bit as a leap of faith. So I think a lot of these things, as much as the outcome was amazing, and I can't think of an event that we've hosted that didn't go and exceed my expectations. But a lot of them definitely had a lot of interesting hurdles that we had to cross and challenges, like with anything. And so honestly, just really happy with the outcome. And even just like, sometimes I forget, maybe Seoul, like Seoul is a good example. Seoul was, for those that don't know that story, it was, we had a rain that was never seen in 100 years time in Seoul. I personally haven't been to Seoul ever. Connor, maybe you had, I can't remember if you had. Okay, so you haven't. So most of us hadn't been here. And all of a sudden we go all the way across the world, land, and there's insane amounts of rain, to the point where 10 people passed away in the city. It was like actually pretty bad because it was obviously a disaster. And then our venue was also flooded. And so kind of Connor and the rest of the squad, who wasn't necessarily in the core events team, were seeing some of the mayhem, a little bit of like, what do we do, right? And we were able to flip that around in about 24 or 36 hours, get a brand new venue, produce as much as possible with it. We ended up getting about 500 people come through. We were expecting around, I think 700 to 1,000, I think. So it's pretty good. We had a little drop off, but it was just obviously we had to change, and we condensed 2 days to 1 day. But anyways, long story short, it's a true testament to how amazing the team is and how insanely talented everyone is. I don't think any average team could pull off what we pull off on a regular basis.
And one thing I want to point out is these aren't just parties. Like, these are actually incredibly high business impact events. And I would say, all of them so far have had, really meaningful partnerships to come out of, because, with remote work and stuff, it's very hard to get FaceTime with, a lot of different partners and potential partners. And, Cribata was something that came, the Avalanche Cribata partnership, that was something that came out of Lisbon. Barcelona, countless deals. I can't speak too much to Berlin because I wasn't there, but even Seoul, we were getting tons of time with a lot of established projects and a lot of the major companies in Korea. And it was really, really impactful. So like, if you're ever like on the fence about coming to one, of like, you're like, like, I'm not sure, like, is it just gonna be a party? Like, no, there's actually so much there. I mean, there's definitely fun to be had, but there is an incredible amount of business impact as well. Just being able to meet other people who are interested in some of the same things you are, find potential business partners, get your startup idea or your company, get it in front of people who might be able to fund it, who might be able to give you technical pointers on how to reach that next step. There's so much of that. When Luigi comes with us, he's always like one of the most popular people there because everyone want to pitch him their DeFi project for Avalanche Rush incentives or multiverse or whatever. And I tend to answer a bunch of technical questions about subnets, about dApps. So it definitely, these are events that like do really great things for Ava Labs and for the community members as well. And I've been able to see several people at multiple events. They came to Lisbon. They also came to Barcelona, or they also came. I saw even some people in Seoul that had come to Summit before, and it's really great checking up on people's journeys over the course of a year, essentially, and seeing people who, the first time I saw them, they were just getting into crypto, and now they're like, oh, I'm all in. I'm like trying to take that next step. And that's been really cool to see. So if anybody is on the fence about going or thinking about it, highly recommend. Can you tease anything that's going to be coming in the future? Is there anything that we've said publicly? I don't want you to get in trouble if
No, I can definitely tease that it is underway. I am really excited though. Like, I think we are thinking about what Avalanche Summit 2 looks like. We're likely gonna still keep the same level of effort and caliber that we do. I think we learn a ton. I think right now, when we look back, a lot of the feedback, it's a lot of qualitative feedback, and I think a lot of people are just blown away, which kind of is helpful, but also not that helpful because not the best feedback, I guess.
Not
Everyone's like, oh, it was
actionable.
amazing. Yeah. But we definitely got a lot of also good feedback, at least anecdotally, as an events team and as a wider Ava Labs team. And I know we collected that right after March. So I'm excited to not only do what we did, but also make it even better. And that's the challenge that I think we all hold ourselves at that standard. And to put it into perspective for those that are listening, who if people actually went there, they'll also be even shocked probably to hear this. Avalanche Summit, the first one, was planned from January 1st to mid-March, and that was how much time we pulled it off. And we didn't use an agency at all. We obviously hired, contractors, production firms, and things like that to help us do the lifting of like building the stage and things. But the core team, which was at the time three, actually, so it's Jade, Chelsea, and Shelby, so 3 people plus me. So it was basically 4, at least on the core event strategy side, and that's how we were able to pull it off. So it was basically like full weekends of this. I would never want to do that timeline ever again, for what it's worth, but just to set that expectations, like even with that time crunch, we were able to pull off 8 stages, 6 days, 4,500 people, 300 speakers, crazy stats all across the board.
Wow, I didn't know you guys rocked that in 10 weeks with 4 people. That's crazy, man. That was such a good event. Huh.
There was that period where I think even like before Lisbon, like I think like even just like what conferences we attended, like I didn't go to any events prior to that, but I know like everyone would be like, oh, look, like the month before they'd be like, oh shoot, the New York event's getting popular. We got to go to this New York one. And then it's like, oh, Lisbon's getting popular. Now we got to throw an event in Lisbon. Now we're actually getting on a time scale where we can prepare like more than like the before the last minute. Cause I think even, ETH Lisbon, like you were saying, was put together in just like a couple weeks. And I remember the venue had to change like the week of as well.
Yeah. The insider Easter egg, I guess, on that was we were trying to put the Formula E car on the roof of this boating dock that we were going to actually activate on, but Andretti didn't want us to use the crane because they didn't have their show car and they had their actual competition car, and so they didn't want us to crane it on top of a roof, and that's what totally made the venue not a good one.
Oh, I didn't know that they actually have a show car.
Well, it's the same thing, but it's the one where it's like if it breaks, the races still happen. That's what they mean by show car.
Yeah, I wonder because I've seen the number has changed of like whose car it was. So they have a couple different things they put out there. Oh, that's neat.
So speaking of Andretti, I was going to say, obviously the events are not the only thing you've done since you've been at Ava Labs. You've done a bunch of cool stuff. and I wanted to maybe go back starting in the beginning until now and just highlight some of the things you've done and get some insight or insider stories or anything you can share. So let's talk about Andretti as much as you can. How did that idea come about, and how did that courtship happen? And then, you know, I know we all met in Lisbon, but I presume there had already, I think that was the first time the teams had met in person, but presumably there'd been talks going on a long time before that. But what are your thoughts on Andretti and how that all came together?
So the Andretti relationship was coming out of a personal one. That's kind of how some of the best ideas come, which is usually just by accident, honestly. But what wasn't accidental was really the research and confidence to move forward with it. And so what I think is important to highlight is, I think I mentioned this, we mentioned this earlier, Andretti and Avalanche Andretti Formula E is in an electric league. It aligns with eco-friendliness. So basically advertises or sells the value proposition of Avalanche's proof of stake value proposition, if you will, to people in a very palatable way. It just, that association is really, really strong. The other thing really was most important is the underdog story. And that's where, coming up on the 2-year mark of the Avalanche anniversary of mainnet launch, we still are kind of seen as the underdog. You're still getting a lot of crypto haters, maxis that are against it. I don't know. I'm usually neutral on those things, and I know you guys are too. So just interesting to watch. And usually, you know, you just have to do more to basically dispel all the negative comments and sentiment. And so that's really where, if we picked a partner, not just Andretti, but other partners in general, who are also in that same underdog story, if you grow together, then that effect can compound so much more. And so tangibly, I can name 2 things. One is, what has been amazing in hindsight is how much Andretti has learned from how we throw events. So it's actually a really good segue, Gabriel, that you went to here, is they were saying, how can you actually evangelize all these people to wear Avalanche gear just like that? And motorsports teams apparently in the league were having a lot of trouble, like actually mobilizing their fan base to come out and also wear the swag, to then just have a sea of red in the stands or a sea of blue or whatever your team might be. And so they were taking notes on how we do these things. And we were saying, well, we have, you know, a fan base that exists offline. We also tap into where they are and not necessarily create channels where we expect them to come, but then again, go to where they are. So Reddit, like Telegram, Discord. And when I told them about Reddit, I was also saying, hey, by the way, Formula E has Reddit channels, racing and motorsports has Reddit channels. Have you guys actually thought of that? They're like, funny enough, we actually have never done anything with Reddit. And I was like, that might be a good place to start. And so I think there was a lot of notes that we shared, and we actually got shortlisted for an events award at the Formula E Gala. And that was something that Andretti had never gotten before, since they were racing in Formula E. And so that was actually really cool. And hopefully that's a testament to our team and its capabilities on the events and just experience side. And then I think the second thing that is worth sharing is about kind of like the compounding effects of an underdog is the reverse. We also find out a lot about how to do brand activations, but also the stakes aren't terribly too high, where it's a $50 million contract, for example, and all of a sudden you feel so pressured to have to live up to that ROI. It's really hard to. I feel, especially with kind of the trickiness of attributing ROI in marketing, especially at the brand level. So I think it's a lot about being able to be nimble together, being able to experiment together, and also being able to then learn from those mistakes and also wins, and then actually continue to do that the following years as well.
So it's funny that you bring up Formula E Reddit. So I have a slightly amusing story. Yeah. So when we were in Seoul watching the Formula E race, the first day it was very rainy, and there was a huge crash on the second lap that had a 7-car crash. And there was a Reddit post from Formula E that did very well. I don't think it was put together by the league, but it showed up on the Formula E subreddit, and it made it, I think, to the front page, and my fiance even saw it. It was basically like, Formula One has the greatest drivers in the world. Formula E, however, and then it was the video clip of 7 cars crashing into the
Yeah.
wall one after the other.
By the way, did you notice the core logo on the back of the car when
Yeah,
that crashed?
yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, pretty funny. Like, core gets a quick plug in this meme, for
Was
better or for
okay?
worse.
Was the driver okay?
Oh, they were all
Yeah,
okay.
all the drivers were okay. It was actually really odd, but basically, like, if you saw it, it was like really slow car crash, all things considered, and it just was like boop, 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 and basically what happens is the tires are all weather tires. They're not optimized for rain, and so you're just gonna have weird results when it rains because they just. I was talking to Jake, one of our drivers, and he was like, "You kind of just wing it."
Yeah. Especially on the second lap, you don't know exactly like where the wet spots are, where the dry spots are.
Yeah,
And it was an interesting race because it had stopped raining, so it was kind of drying up, but very slowly. And just that one particular there was a couple spots, even just where I was sitting, I saw so many people just slip and slide as they were going through the whole way through. Or there was probably like 5 or 6 collisions there. It was pretty entertaining.
Yeah, somehow I didn't catch that the rain had messed it up. If I remember my South Korean geography, was number one, was it on the little island that you showed me, Jay? And number two, I'm guessing it wasn't because you said you had to change venues. And number two, isn't that like right next to Gangnam from Gangnam Style? So is it a super posh
yeah.
area? Is it like a really, really nice area?
It is a really business. It's like a really nice business district. There's residential apartments and stuff, but it's really like downtown is kind of the best way to describe it. And the race is in the Olympic Stadium, like 15-minute walk, really close over the bridge. The floating island's like the other way towards the Han River on the north side.
Hmm. It didn't
Yeah, we
happen on the
stayed.
island though. You didn't have the event on the island.
No, no. It was at the race actually.
It was
Oh, I
supposed
see.
to be at the island, but the island flooded and the
Right,
bridge
right.
was
Yeah.
inaccessible. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So I
Yeah,
guess
we did. Yeah, we stayed in Gangnam. I went to the Gangnam style statue. It was
did you?
chronically undervisited, I have to say. This should be at least as popular as the Chicago Bean, but like
It
I was the
should.
only one.
Should. Did you get pictures?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I gotta
It's
see
the
It's
it.
size
literally like,
hands. Yeah,
I
yeah.
gotta see it. I gotta
It's
see it.
next to the hotel we stayed at, so I saw that every day actually.
yeah.
Seoul's a
It's
cool
at
city.
there's this giant mall. Yeah.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
Seoul. I was there a few years ago. It's a beautiful city. I love Asia, of course. It's all amazing, but there's so many wild cities, and Seoul is awesome. Yeah, I went to Jeju Island, which is like this little island off the south coast. Okay, so before we wrap it up, we want to be respectful of Jay's time. I guess I wanted to ask a couple other things. Number one, is there any other stuff that you've built that you would like to highlight? Because you really have done a lot of cool stuff. And then number two, if you want to give a shout out to anybody on your team. And then number three, I guess where people can find you. But first, let's just say, is there anything else you want to shine a light on?
I guess worthwhile taking the opportunity. I mean, I think just maybe shed light on what we're doing on marketing so far, what we're looking at out for the rest of the year, and what we're most excited for. So I think the last year or so has really been about just like insane amounts of sprinting all the time. It seems it's like that all across the board, right? It's engineering, product, BD. Now that the dust has settled a little bit, we should take the moment to really take a second and look around and see what has actually worked and what has not. But also, there's certain processes that we skipped over, just in the interest of time, to just get things out to market. And so, what we're really doing is trying to make sure that we have full visibility end to end of all the things that we're doing, and also being able to measure that as effectively as possible. Measurement in crypto is extremely challenging. You have to juggle on-chain data, off-chain data, privacy. Avalanche and its products have really strict privacy policies.
And really
So that
quickly, a
makes it a
question
little bit.
about that, like a technical question about that. How do you track this stuff? And for, I guess you define KPIs. How do you track it? Do you use spreadsheets? Is there automation tools? Like, what does that actually look like?
Yeah. Well, tracking is channel specific. So you have tools, we use things like Sprout Social for social media analytics. We use research platforms to have desktop research all packaged up from like ethnographies all the way to actual interviews and also statistically significant research on a larger scale. And so I think it's all about tying this together. I would love to have a dashboard that brings it all together. And so then when you talk about, okay, we're engaging developers. Here are the developers up top who are probably Web2 developers. Here are the ones that are in the middle who are Web3, maybe Solidity devs. Here are the people that are at the bottom who are likely in the Avalanche ecosystem and developing. And then conversion would mean deploying a dApp or deploying a tool or deploying anything that's useful that contributes to the Avalanche ecosystem. And so I think we have points of measurement at every step, but we just need to bring that all the way through. And so we can say, okay, maybe this is not the target audience that we should be focused on, or maybe we should put more money on the top of the funnel instead of the bottom. So I think that kind of like precision is what we want, and we're getting close. It does take some time, and so I'm just excited to talk about that at least, or give a nod to it. I think to talk about it as a whole, hours and hours of exactly what we're doing. But just wanted to let people know, because I think most of the time it's not really obvious what goes on in the back end, because we don't really, we're not creating a blog post on how our stack works, for example, right? So that's what I want to.
How big is your team? And sorry to cut you off. How big is your team, and are you scaling out?
No worries. Yeah, so our Ava Labs marketing team, we have basically marketing strategists. We're about 15. We have about I think 4 designers now, 5, so almost 20 headcount. And then we also have community managers in the community team. That's about 15, 20 as well. So all in, it's about 40, 35, 40. So that's kind of how I split it. But if you really think about it, it's kind of hub and spoke. It's core strategists in the middle, spokes being the region leads for the community. And you hopefully are able to replicate the same strategy at each region. And I think that's also another challenge that we're trying to tackle. We are hiring. We're always hiring. I think that's something that marketing and of course the other verticals are not foreign to. And so that's where I think if there's anything that you have questions on, I think Twitter is probably the best spot. My handle is JAYKS. I was able to secure the name without numbers. And so feel free to reach out. I'll try and be prompt as possible. Sometimes it gets con spam, so forgive me if I don't get to it for a few, but if it is something that is related to recruitment, I'm definitely one to reply. If it's about the newest NFT mint that's happening on Avalanche or Solana or Ethereum, probably not going to respond.
Epic. Okay, I think that was it. I don't know if there's any way you want to give a shout out on your team too, or
Yeah, I mean, I guess like shout out, I think most timely thing, shout out to the Seoul team, honestly. Connor, you're one of them. I think we had a really good squad on the ground. It's always really nice to, like, there's new people obviously in the group. There's also old people. Gabriel, you saw that in Berlin too. Like everyone on this call is an old head, I think, at Ava Labs. So, it's always good to mix things up a little bit. Like Yuho is one of them that showed up. I think for Berlin, we had a few other new faces. Sam, I guess. Yeah, Connor Chevley. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Gyoho's the champion.
Always love that.
Gyoho's awesome. Shout out to Gyoho. He's a badass. He's a great engineer. Like
he is
really good engineer.
He is such a good guy.
Okay, epic. And you already gave your Twitter profile, so I think that wraps it up with regards to that. So thanks for joining us, Jay. Really, man, you're awesome. You've done so much for the Avalanche ecosystem. I don't think people can show you enough gratitude. So I just want to make sure everybody out there watching knows that Jay has done some seriously powerful moves. Like I said, think about Barcelona, think about Lisbon. He was one of the core, less than a handful of people organizing that stuff, and Andretti. And so thanks for everything you've done, man. Really, a lot of gratitude.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. And Connor, all right, let's do it. One last time, where can they find you? And then any of your last minute thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been a crazy year plus now. And I've absolutely loved doing this. It's been a great pleasure. I've always dreamed of having a podcast. I've tried and failed to have one successfully many times over the years. Never been able to get past episode 3. So I think we've done at least 50 of these. We're definitely over the year mark, and I'm super impressed, and super proud of what we did, what we built. Because you and I have been basically doing this since together since day one, and it's been such an amazing show. We've had so many great guests, so many great conversations, so much great feedback from the community, so many cats. And it's still going to continue to be the man with the most cats in crypto. I'm definitely not like disappearing from public life entirely. I'll still be on Twitter. I'll still be doing shows and events and things like that. But like I said a little bit earlier, it just I kind of let crypto consume my entire life for 2 years, and I'm very much a kind of polymathic person who just has a lot of interests and a lot of things I want to do. And it just kind of got very exhausting just being on for crypto all the time. And Jay's a fantastic photographer. He'll tell me he doesn't get to do photography nearly as much as he wants to anymore. And I feel that too. Like I love photography. I don't do it very much. I got a lot of projects around the house I'd like to do. A lot of even like stuff with entertainment. I've been thinking about starting a Substack for various things. So yeah, I just want to try some things new. Don't want to let it get stale. But yeah, you will still be hearing from me in the future. And Gabriel, I want to say thank you to you so much for being such an amazing co-host and really kicking everything off. Yeah, wouldn't be here without you. So the whole show was your idea, and I am super glad you let me be a part of it. But if you're interested in finding me and seeing what I'm doing after this, you can always find me on Twitter. If you're still here after this long, you probably follow me already. But if not, yeah, I'm Das_Connor, DAS_CONNOR. And yeah, it's been a journey. It's been a pleasure, and I'm still excited for about Avalanche and what I'm doing during the day. I think Avalanche CLI is going amazing. I think subnets are amazing. Subnets are the future, and there's going to be a lot more to come.
Awesome, man. Yeah, again, reflecting the gratitude to you. There's no question about it. The success that we have had would have not been even half as possible without you investing your social equity and your energy. And I've had so many people say to myself, love the Subnet show, Connor rules. So you've got a lot of fans out there. So thank you so much. You're an amazing engineer. I know that you're going to do some amazing stuff in your career. So I'm excited to see what you ultimately pull off. With regards to myself, like I said at the beginning, I do intend to keep the Subnet show going. But I've already been thinking about other formats. I don't think it's going to continue to be a weekly interview format. I think I might do more like technical deep dives and then release them when they're ready. We'll see what format it takes. I'm going to take some time to sort of reflect on the next steps. If you're somebody out there and you're inspired and you have a great idea, reach out to me. Maybe we'll work together on something. But yeah, that's it for me. If you made it this far, you're an absolute champion. Thank you to everybody who's been involved in the Avalanche or in the Subnet show journey. It's been truly a great journey. And I think this week we're going to pass the mic back to Connor so that he can sign us off. So thank you, everybody, and much love.
So for one last time, from Snowflake to Avalanche, and through consensus to the stars.
Thank you, everybody. Peace.
Thanks.